All right. Welcome, everyone, to Professionally Speaking Toastmasters. A mission of our club, as all Toastmasters Club, is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills, which in turn, as you know, fosters self-confidence and personal growth. And here at Professionally Speaking, we pride ourselves on rocket powering the growth of our members in speaking and in evaluation. Tonight, we have a special event for you. And I want to go ahead and introduce, actually, before that, pardon me, one moment. Let me pass control of the meeting to our club president who can greet us all. Please welcome Hazel Booth. Hazel, you're muted.
Hello. I'm so glad you're here. Sorry for our bumpy start, but we're all here in our places with bright, shining faces, and we are all about to learn something really valuable tonight. As I'm had returned to the workforce, I can really see where the topic for tonight's presentation is so very important. Everybody needs to know it, not just the boomers, or not just the millennials, or not just the Gen X's or Z's. We all need to work together. So this, I've heard Karen present this before, but I'm getting a different take on it this time. So thank you. So Lindy has just put the agenda in the chat. If you would like to tap into it, it's a pretty simple agenda tonight, except there's some breakout rooms and things. First off, I'd like to greet our guests. I see several names and faces that are not as familiar, and I would just like to welcome you. I know we got off to a little bit of that conversation with David Clark before the meeting. Welcome, Dave. Where are you calling in from? I'm going to move to Emma. Emma, how are you this evening, and where are you from? All right, Vivian, yours is a familiar face. You're like one of the family. Central Idaho, Dave says. Thank you.
Hello there, Hazel. Greetings to everybody from halfway around the world. Yes, I am your future. It's Friday morning, 10:36 a.m. Belated happy Valentine. I love you.
Thank you. That's great energy. Yvonne, I had a chance to hear and see your view out the window. Would you like to say a word here as we jump into this topic?
Hello, good evening, everyone. Actually, my time is February 16th, I think, one day ahead of your time. I come from China, District 85. Great to see you. Thank you.
We got a couple Back to the Future folks here. And Miss Ray Sook.
Yeah, hello, everyone. I am from South Korea. Here is 11:30 in the morning, and it's my honor to be with you, and thanks for having me.
We appreciate you showing up. And not the least, but maybe the last on my rounds here is Mario. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to say a word before we jump into our presentation?
A word.
A word. Thank you. That is, brevity is like next to godliness, I've been told. All right, so I'm going to turn it back to our Toastmaster of the evening, Lindy McLean. I'm so happy to see you all here, and let's learn.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Have you ever struggled with communicating with or understanding someone from a different culture or generation? I know I have. Have you wondered how to market to them? Tonight's presenter is working on her Presentation Mastery Level 5, Prepare to Speaking Professionally project. With communication being foundational to business and personal relationships, it has become increasingly challenging and critical for leaders to understand how to connect with, market to, and partner different generations and cultures for success. It is not uncommon to work with 5 different generations at the same time, and is becoming more common to have multiple generations living under one roof. This can create stress and opportunity. In this workshop, distinguished Toastmaster Karen McNamara, Communications and General will facilitate interactive dialogue and activity that will have you laughing, saying, aha, and leaving with strategies and tools you can immediately apply for better communication with different cultures and generations. With her workshop entitled, I Don't Understand You, Communicating with Different Cultures and Generations for Success, please help me welcome distinguished Toastmaster Karen McNamara.
Thank you, Lindy, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. In 1980, I was given a set of orders to go to Japan for 3 to 4 years. Fortunately, the military gave us a cultural class in advance to help us out, which for me was very important because I had never been to Japan. One of the things that I learned was that it's important if you meet someone new to bring a little presento wrapped very beautifully. Well, I had the opportunity to meet my new neighbors. So I pondered what I should bring and thought, well, I'll make a little banana bread. I'll wrap it up nicely and bring that. It'd be simple, something that they don't typically get, and it would be a successful gift. So I do that and I wrap it nice and put a beautiful bow on because I knew that was important. Went to the door and I knocked. They opened the door. I handed the little presento. They carefully invited me in and opened it up very slowly, admiring all the ribbons, all the wrapping. And then when it was opened, arigato gozaimasu, arigato gozaimasu, thank you very much, thank you very much, thank you very much. It seemed like an awful lot of thank yous to me, but I said, you're welcome, you're welcome. And then they started handing me gift after gift after gift, and I didn't know what to do. Well, as I walked in the home, I do as typical in America, and I noticed how beautiful it was, and I commented, oh, I love your home. It's so pretty and welcoming, and that picture is beautiful, and I love the calendar. Well, the next thing I knew, they took the picture off the wall. They're handing me the picture. They're handing me the calendar. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Obviously, I didn't cross that cultural gap well. So I asked my Japanese friend, and he said, well, what did you bring for a gift? I said, I brought some banana bread. He said, oh, dame desu. I said, why? He said, because it's homemade. They have to give you something better than what you gave them, and they cannot top homemade. Who would have known? And I said, well, why were they trying to give me the things off their wall, the pictures and the calendars? Well, he said, did you admire them? And I said, well, yes. Oh, dame desu. He said, that means no matter how valuable, they must give it to you. Who would have known? I certainly did not. Then, 2004, I was in a different Toastmaster meeting. We were collecting for the meeting, and we had a pretty good number of people. And there was one gentleman that was visiting, and he was from a veterans generation, a World War II generation. And he sat there, and we began the meeting. And about 5 minutes in, he stormed out of the meeting. I followed him out, and I said, "Excuse me, sir, did we do something to offend you?" I will never come back to your Toastmaster meeting again, ever. What did I do wrong? Well, you disrespected me, the military, and Toastmasters International. How did we do that? You didn't open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Typically, we did in that club, but we didn't that particular day. Of course, I pondered and apologized and asked him to return, but I wondered why. Why was this so important to him? Why did this matter so much to his generation? That's what we're going to talk about tonight. How do we communicate across different generations? And how do we communicate across different cultures? We want to be successful as leaders. While you ponder that for a moment, I'm going to pull my slides up. Let me share my screen. I need to have my share enabled, please. While I'm waiting for my share to be enabled again, if you should have in the chat, you should have a handout that gives you a notes page. I recommend you open up that notes page or print it if you're able. I'll have the information through my presentation, but when you get into the breakouts, it will be helpful. I will also have a couple of handouts for you at the end of the meeting and for the second breakout. Let me see if I can get into share screen now. It's still disabled, so if you can enable me for that, please.
I don't have that power, and Raghunatha does not seem to be responding. I'm going to enable it for everyone and just trust that no one will.
Thank you, Lindy.
Let's see.
I will be sending you the PowerPoint at the very end. So if for some reason we can't pull it up, it's not a big deal. I will be able to send you the whole thing at the end and you can just listen and watch me. So we'll give it just a moment longer and
Try it now, Karen.
okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for that little interlude. We are going to be talking about the 5 generations. Often I have said, I don't understand you. How do we communicate with different cultures and different generations for success? What I'm going to cover tonight in this workshop is we will talk about the 5 specific generations that are in the workforce today and why they're different. And why do we care? As leaders, why do we care that there's 5 generations and that they're different? We'll discuss how key events between the ages of 8 and 18 shaped generational world today. We'll also practice ways to communicate and market across the cultures and different generations, and talk briefly on how 2020 and COVID changed the consumer work practices. Finally, we will leave with some strategies and tools that you can actually use to apply immediately for your success. All right. Communication has changed over time. We used to all meet in person, talk and chat and have our water or coffee. Then everybody started bringing laptops. Then we started working from home and using our personal phones or our iPads. Then we switched to Zoom and we became international. We started working with people all around the world. And now, as we do once a month in this club, we actually have hybrid and have a combination of the two. So communication certainly has changed. What I would like to do now is I would like to go ahead and find out who we have in our group. So what I'd like you to do is use the chat. And in the chat, what I would like you to do is say, specifically, where did you grow up between the ages of 8 and 18? So were you, when you were between 8 and 18, were you in the US? If so, where about in the US? Were you in China? Were you in another country? Where were you when you grew up between the ages of 8 and 18? Just put it in the chat. Okay, I see Hungary, Southeast Georgia, Korea, New York, India, Washington, China, Monterey Park in California, Oregon, Canada. All right, so we have Hungary, Georgia, South Korea, New York, United States, Minnesota, Alaska, Maine. Ooh, someone else was traveling. India, Silverdale, Washington, India, China, Monterey Park, Oregon, US, Manila, Philippines, LA, California. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, so as you can see, we are an international group. We are coming from all around the world and in the United States, from multiple places in the United States. That makes a difference. This particular quote is one that I became aware of several years ago. People resemble their times more than they resemble their parents. It's an Arab proverb. Now, first time I read that, first time I heard it, I didn't agree with it. I said, no, I don't agree. It's about your culture, it's about your genetics, it's about your family. What do you mean they resemble their times more than their parents? I didn't get it. Now I do. That's what we'll talk more about as we go through this tonight. To give us a framework, I want us to work from the same definitions. So when I talk about generations, I want you to understand what I'm referring to. So a generation is a group of people that were born around the same time and raised around the same place. People in this, what you might call a birth cohort, have similarities, preferences, and values over their lifetime. That's why it's important to understand where they grew up between those ages of 8 and 18. They exhibit similar characteristics such as communication, like how do they communicate because of what they learned or saw, their view of work and the future, shopping, motivation, because they experience similar trends and major events at approximately the same time and through similar channels. In other words, some people heard it all over the radio. Some people heard it over the internet. Some people got it in person, but it was in that time frame, everybody was learning about things in a similar way. So they tend to look at the world in similar ways. This is a key point. If you don't remember much else from tonight, remember this point. A generation shaping trends are most influential when a person is between the ages of 8 and 18. So during those formative years, which is why I asked where you grew up at that time, is when you frame the way you look at the world, the way you look at work, the way you look at family. It's all framed around that time. Geography affects the relationship as well. For example, a millennial, and we'll talk about the names of the generations in a minute, but if you're a millennial and you were raised in an urban environment versus a rural one, or in another country, you will share different characteristics, but there'll be characteristics similar to that same cohort. really key that leaders, all of us are leaders, and it's key as leaders to understand what shaped each of these generations, what their current characteristics are, and where they're heading, both in the near and the long term. If we want to be successful as leaders, we need to understand the framework and where people are coming from as they do this. So I'm going to give you, and on the notes page handout, you also have the list of the different generations and the years that I'm using for the framework tonight. So you can certainly write in those or follow along there. I will put it on the screen, but you will utilize that also in your breakout. So the first generation that I will list, and this is based on literature and research of generations, you will find in research that the years vary slightly. They might vary as much as 5 years on either end of the generation, and that's based on areas. So what I did was I picked one definition so that we could work from that for tonight, and I took this definition because I could put numbers to it for the US Census Bureau from 2022. So the first generation is the veterans or World War II, or sometimes called the silent generation. And this is around the world. It's those that are born between 1928 and 1945. Now in the US, there's 18 million in that group, approximately right now. That was as of 22. Now, if the same generation would apply in other parts of the world, but the numbers obviously would be different. The next group is the baby boomers. That's those that were born between 1946 and 1964. Gen X comes next, Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. Gen Y or millennial, born between 1981 and 1996. And then finally, the latest generation to enter into the workforce is Gen Z, and they're born between 1997 and 2012. And again, you don't have to memorize these, but if you have the note sheet when you're in your breakout, this will be a reference point. Okay, next. So I want to see who we have in the room. What generations do we have in the room? So I want you to put in the chat which generation you are based on the dates that are here on the screen. So are you a veteran, a boomer, a Gen X, a Gen Y, or a Gen Z? Let's see who we have. We have boomer, 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 Gen X, boomer, Gen Y, boomer, boomer, boomer. We have lots of boomers. We have a Gen X and a Gen Y. Another Gen X. So a couple of Gen X, one Gen Y, lots of boomers. Okay, that's great. And that's a good representation of 3 of the generations, which is what I would tend to expect in a group like this, because we're currently in business, working on speaking, have jobs, or out in the world. And so boomers, X and Y are the 3 that are the primary folks in that generation. Now you are going to start seeing and having, oh, there is I did say a Gen Z, awesome. So we have Gen Z in the group. That's wonderful. So we have, wow, 4 groups represented. That's perfect. So the only group we don't have represented is the veterans generation. Okay, let's take this to the next step. Next thing I want to do is I want to have you go into the breakout room. We're going to put you into breakout rooms. And I think we're going to put about 4 to 5 of you in the room. And here's what I want you to do. In your room, I want you to discuss what key events, music, and trends you remember happening when you were between the ages of 8 and 18. So when you were that age, what big events took place and where were you living when they happened? So for example, I'm a boomer. I was born right in the middle of the boomer generation. And I remember like it was yesterday when the man walked on the moon. That's one thing that stands out in my mind. I remember the music was, you know, we had rock and roll music, and I just remember the things seemed like the world is open. There's all kinds of possibility because a man just landed on the moon. And I remember being in school and talking about that and watching it on TV. And I at the time lived in Michigan when that took place. So I want you to think about, just talk with each other about what you remember. What are some big events in music, in happenings? What things do you remember that took place? What are the big events? And talk about that in your groups, and then we'll take 10 minutes, then we'll come back as a large group and we'll find out what you experienced when you were between 8 and 18 and where you were when it happened. Okay, so if I can have help with
Raghunatha, can you open your mic and give instructions?
So, creating the breakout room.
So we could do like three groups, it looks like.
We have 17 people in the room, so we can create.
So 4 groups would be great. Perfect.
Okay, give a minute. Okay. I create auto assignment this time, so that 4 per each room.
Perfect.
You all
And
should
then
have
we'll see you
got
all
an
back in
invite.
10 minutes once he's assigned you. What you remember, key things that you remember happening between 8 and 18.
I've not assigned you both to any room. You're free to join any room.
Okay.
Karen, did you get an invite?
Look, it's Lynn.
Ah. Who's
Well,
got the floor?
Yeah, 4.
No, I said, who's got the floor?
No one yet. I like taking control. Who would like to talk about their memories? 8 to 18, their memories and their music.
Vivian, why don't you go first? You'll be interesting because you're came from such a multicultural place.
That is so right. When people ask me where did I grow up, I'm like, oh, that's a simple question with a complicated answer. Physically in Manila, Philippines, no Filipino friends. I was at the American International School where all my classmates were kids of ambassadors, consuls, and kids of multinational company CEOs. So what should my answer be? Where was I? Maybe the answer is lost in time and space physically in Manila, Philippines.
What events
I'm
do you
proud.
remember happening?
Yes.
What world events do you remember happening?
Oh, we shook the world. The Beatles came to the Philippines. Yes. And of course, there was Dave Clark 5. He's my crush. And David Clark's in the room, right? There you go. The Beatles was the thing. That's what it was. Yes, Lindy, about you.
I remember the day my mother woke us up in the middle of the night to go to a neighbor's to watch the man walk on the moon. So the moonwalk.
Yeah, the moonwalk was big. I was 13 when that happened, and I was a geek. I actually wrote a letter to Neil Armstrong and got a letter back. Well,
Wow.
I don't know who wrote it, but he signed it. I was a science geek even back then. And music, of course, you know, Beatles, like you say. I think about also the Vietnam War, and I think about Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
during that time as well.
Judy,
Joan,
you're gonna wish it. Lindy, can you believe what Judy just said? It warms my heart. Neil Armstrong visited my school, the American school in Manila, Philippines, because we had the biggest bases of America from the entire world, the
Right.
biggest bases in the Philippines. So Neil Armstrong was at my school and I was there and I have no memories. Oh my gosh. Oh wow. I just know he was there, like shucks. Emma's laughing. She's like, what a bunch of old fogies in the room.
yeah, and Emma
Oh,
has a few things.
no, it's not. You're in the similar generation of my parents, so it's not much.
Oh, cool.
Oh, there you go.
I was born around like exactly 11 days after 9/11.
Yes.
So I'm more in modern music and stuff like that, but I listen to classic music because that's what my parents listen to. I listen to like classic rock and stuff because my dad was born in the 50s. So I understand stuff from that generation. Of course I had 9/11, but also COVID. So around the time that it was when I was 18, that's when COVID hit. I was a senior in high school and just about to start my college career. So right now I'm a senior in high school or senior in college right now. So it has been 4 years since I have been 18.
Hey.
Have you attended in person or have you done some of it virtually?
Oh yeah, I have plenty of classes that are in person. I even had classes in person in 2020.
Okay.
Well,
You had to wear a mask the whole entire time, but
Mhm.
they're
I
expecting
still
you to
do
go
in grocery stores.
Some other things I remember, president assassination attempts. I don't know if I was alive for JFK, but definitely remember Ronald Reagan being attempted. And
Robert Kennedy.
yes, Bobby Kennedy. Then there was movies, the movie stars, Robert Redford and oh, of course, now I'm to the age where I forget the movie stars' names, so I'll make fun of myself here.
And then communication. I mean, I remember rotary phones and then push button phones and then carry a phone around the house, big clunky thing. All the way to cell phones. And Emma, you must communicate so differently definitely than how we communicated. And I'm curious, as a Gen Z, what you think of social media.
Yeah, I went
Oh, I think you're frozen. Hopefully you'll come back to us. So I'll ask Vivian and Lindy, what do you think about social media? What do you think about it personally versus professionally?
Judy, I have 3 words. Oh, sorry, Lindy. Go ahead, Lindy.
You go ahead, go with your 3 words.
3 words. I miss hugs. Right. I mean, I used to go out every day, have lunch out with friends, dinner out with friends, and then pandemic, 3 years, like it was just so strange not being physically, because I'm a very huggy person. What about the 2 of you?
I am very huggy.
Yeah. But I'm also an introvert and I always enjoyed letter writing and enjoy emailing and so forth. And so in some ways, social media to me, it has been a fascinating way to connect with people
Yeah,
because
sorry I was unconnected. My laptop is old. It's 7 to 8 years old, so it needs to be new.
we're older than that, so we
Yeah.
get it.
To go back to electronics and stuff, because that's where you guys were at the time.
Yeah.
Went from flip phones and CDs and the tapes for movies to CDs to streaming devices and stuff. So mine changed dramatically in some ways very, very quickly. So yeah, that would happen with me. And so with movies and stuff, yeah, I like classic movies. My favorite movie when I was a little kid was Singing in the Rain. So
Oh,
Gene
you can
Kelly.
break out in song.
So yeah.
And what do you think of social media? That
Social media is good and bad at the same time. It does help you for more current events and everything you want to see very quickly, but also for some people it's very damaging and it could be threatening to them. But also some people these days, they just blurt it out before finding out the research if something offends you, and they just say it at that moment. I do a little research a little bit, so then if I'm offended that person, I'm really offended to that person, and I can do that.
And do you use social media a lot for your interpersonal, like friends and stuff, or is that still more direct, either texting or I don't even know what you do, TikToking, but I mean, is there stuff that's like private to you, or are so I have friends who are like in their 30s and they just use social media all the time for everything and post everything, and I'm curious what you do.
So I use it to like reach some of my friends that I don't really talk to anymore, who I talk to, see what people are doing. Or I post like, oh, certain holidays, like for Valentine's Day, I posted yesterday. I also use it, I also have a photography account on Instagram. So I post on that like 3 times a day, 3 times a week, sometimes more, depending on the things. So it's really just communicating and networking and using it for other things. So it's used for many things. I don't use it so much I use it connecting. I don't use TikTok a lot, because I was already in the range of it's now just starting to happen. So I wasn't used to it, but also you can see TikToks and in short videos on like Instagram or YouTube. So you don't need to be on TikTok to have TikToks.
Cool. I've never been on TikTok.
It's just short videos and stuff. If you're on Instagram or any other thing or on Facebook, you really don't need to be on TikTok so much. Some people just have it to get popular very quickly, or they just have it so then they can have more to stream, which some people they're on there for hours, or they get a notification and they'll tell you on TikTok, say, you weren't on TikTok for a long time. You need to stop looking at your TikTok. But I don't usually get that range because I use that for posting reasons. I don't use it for entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, it is true. Vivian had mentioned before that, lots of interpersonal connection when we were growing up because these other opportunities weren't there. And so there was tons and tons of in-person, and there's both the good and the bad of that as well. But I still like in-person best.
Oh, I like in person too. Like I don't like text messaging so much. I like calling them or being on like FaceTime, but it's more fun to do that.
Emma
Especially
has an
when I have a great
old
aunt that's
soul.
102 years old.
Fantastic.
So she's older than the veterans thing because she was born in 1921 in Boston, Massachusetts.
You should tell Karen that and ask what the situation.
looks like we're all just about back now. Welcome back. Hopefully you had some good discussions in the breakout room. And Judith, if you can just time me for 10 minutes, that would be perfect. And I want to hear from the group. What kinds of things did you find? Go ahead and let's try just opening up and letting people share a little bit about what things they remember when they were growing up and where they were located when that happened. We'll just have people speak out, and if that is harder with the group, then we'll do it in chat. But let's see if we can have people speak out. What did you find in your groups? Anyone can raise their hand.
Moon landing,
Hi, Judy. What did you find?
walking on the moon, Vietnam War. I mean, I was 6 when Kennedy was shot, but I remember it, even though I wasn't 8 yet. But all of that and
Okay.
other assassinations as well. But moonwalking,
Yep, that was
great
mine
music.
too. All right, who else?
That makes me think of those moonwalking shoes they used to have. That was kind of a trend that came around after your landing.
Mainly the people have different cultural, both in country and location ways that they grew up. Some were insulated, some were a bit more open. And that's a factor that needs to be considered when you're dealing with someone. If you're talking about, well, I used to do this and I did this and I did that as if it was completely normal, and the other person's looking at you, I would never have thought of doing that.
Mario's got his hand up. Mario?
So this is Macedonia, former Yugoslavia, and then this is my hometown, Kumano. I was pretty much the two most influential events of my growing up were 9/11 and the death of our president in 2004. They were going on a plane on a business meeting to the US, and the plane crashed, so we lost our country's president.
Yeah.
80 Cent by heart and always willing to learn. I'm a millennial.
Wow. Thank
Vivian?
you.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Lindy, as I shared earlier, the big thing during our time was the Beatles, but the bigger thing was that Neil Armstrong came to my school, the American International School. I wish I shook his hand. Wow.
And Emma?
So one thing that I'd said very quickly is that my great aunt is 102. So she was born in 1921. So she's actually older than what the veterans thing is. So there's now another even further generation of that.
I love it. Yes, that's true. There are a few folks that are from what they call the greatest generation, and that was before the born before 1928. Yeah, wow, that's great.
Karen King, I saw your hand. You're muted though. You need to unmute.
I was reminiscing about the Beatles. I was a senior in college, and my sorority mother in my sorority had the only television in the house. And so we all flooded into her room and watched the Beatles on Ed Sullivan's show. And that was a big event. And the beginning of a whole new era as far as
I remember that too.
yes.
And I was in college and we flooded into one room when John Lennon was killed.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yep. And the Kennedy assassination was another big one. Sandra.
Well, in my group, we talked a lot about music. Each of us shared the meaningful event of music, and also music spanning the other generations as well. How we learn to possibly appreciate other generations' music along the way. Beatles was mentioned, Bee Gees, Rolling Stones, and then also the music of the 80s, Mario talked about. What was interesting also was how sports played into Mohan's life as well, and how that was a significant formative experience too. But thank you, Karen.
Yes, absolutely. And Emma, so what was a big thing you think of right now as you're our Gen Z representative. What when you think of a big event that's happened in your life between 8 and 18, what is it that stands out?
I guess COVID and when Kobe Bryant died,
Okay.
because I'm from LA, so
Yeah,
that's
that's
part
it.
because I'm
I
an I'm
totally
like,
get that. Yep. Okay.
Judith,
All
first,
right. And in our group, we did as David mentioned, people were represented from around the world, and some of their experiences were different because of that. Some of their experiences they relate sometimes more to a different generation because of their experience being similar to someone else. So what I'm going to do now, I love this feedback. It's wonderful, and I'm going to share my screen again so that I can just sort of summarize all of this that we've talked about so far. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. All right, so. All right, my screen showing okay? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to, based on the definitions that I've given on the years, and based on the feedback you've given us to now, go through the generations as it relates now to us communicating with them. Okay, so let's look at this. So the veterans, we didn't have anybody in this group, but we've covered the other groups. So with this group, the one is the World War II or silent generation. Some of the things that happened during then, that was a real tough time, and some of the other people around the world who have gone through a lot of war could identify with some of this. This particular generation, it's be like my mom, who's in her 90s right now. She can tell you when Pearl Harbor happened, the Korean War, World War II, Depression, Social Security, the flu epidemic. They went through a lot of really tough times during then. So they ended up pulling together as a group and as a family. The family unit became very strong. So the military was the one that sort of pulled them out of that and ended the war and ended the Depression right toward the end. So they feel very strong about the respecting authority, representing history, listening to stories, things like that. So in that scenario I talked about at the very beginning with the gentleman who was so upset about the Pledge of Allegiance, to him that was where America came together, and that was where, when Toastmasters was started, that was a piece of it. And how because that was the whole idea, was people pulling together to support the flag and coming out of the war, out of the Depression. And to him, that was not respecting history or him or anything related to it. So that was very important to him. And if you're dealing with people in this generation, you want to listen. That's really important. Listen to their stories, understand why they're coming, why they feel the way they do, and what they experienced. I used to laugh at my mom because she said, we've got to go to the store to get toilet paper. And I said, Mom, you have 18 rolls. And she said, but I might have guests and people might come. Well, then COVID hit, and guess what? My mom had plenty of toilet paper and other people didn't. I should have listened to her. Baby boomers. Okay, we heard a lot of the things that baby boomers experienced or remember. I absolutely know exactly where I was when they landed on the moon. Woodstock, post-depression, the world, the sky's the limit, the music, the rock and roll, some of the other things that people mentioned. This was a time after the war where we wanted to be able to provide for our kids. We wanted everything. We wanted the world to open up to them. So we wanted to provide for our kids, who were the next generations coming into play. And they called the boomers because lots of babies were born at this time. Followed by Gen X. Well, we had a couple of Gen X's in the group. I think, let's see, we had Mario tallied it for us: 1 Gen Z, 2 Gen Ys, 2 Gen X, and 8 boomers. So Gen X. So in this time, a lot of people remember Watergate, the Challenger disaster, Desert Storm was during that time. This is when technology exploded and we had the Y2K, the stock market plunge, all of those kinds of things happened, and Gen X looked at things differently. Gen Y, a lot of discussion came out when Gen Y came into the world because things were different. Now technology was there, technology had exploded, and both Gen X and Gen Y wanted to know why. Why are we doing something? It's not always the same. We do not have to do things the same. In my generation and boomers, it was, you ask me to do something, I say yes. You say jump, I say how high. Gen X said, wait a minute. My parents worked, that was all that mattered, was work. I want to have more work-life balance. I have technology, I want flex schedule. I want to be able to be with my kids. I want to be able to go to things. I want to know why. If it makes sense, then let's do it. And then they were faced with Columbine, 9/11. Almost every Gen Y, regardless of where you were in the world, because it seemed to get around the world, was 9/11. Drugs and violence were becoming much more prevalent. You could hear about them all the time. So it was a real interesting mix with the millennials. They saw that we could accomplish things. They came in. When my son came into work, his second day on his first job, he was already vying for the CEO role because he was the one that was educated. He had all the stuff and he knew he could do it, but he didn't have the experience. So that's where the communication and the mentoring come into play. And Gen Z, I'm so excited we have Gen Z represented as well, because Gen Z and Gen Y are coming up in our workforce. We have to listen to them if we want to see, because they're what's happening in the work world, and they're going to be taking over the leadership. So we need to understand where they're coming from and where it's going. And one of the things I asked, what do you remember, what stands out? And I think any Gen Z I've ever asked that, the first thing that happens is they talk about COVID, the pandemic. That's the thing that, because it isolated, it kept people inside. Many didn't have their own graduation. They had to move inside. All of a sudden, work changed. Work was inside, and work, in addition, was shifting to working from home, working remotely. There's an economic collapse. There's war. There's disasters. There's a lot of things going on. And if you listen to that and you think about it, it's very similar to the veterans generation. Lots of similar things going on. So the impact of, there's the uncertainty about work. Millennials and Gen X said, I want, my house and my picket fence and my kids and my retirement plan. I want to travel. Gen Z is like, I don't know if I'm going to put food on the table tomorrow. I don't know. The world is too uncertain. I'm not sure. People are saying, I'm not sure I want to be in debt and go to college. Maybe I should do a trade. Maybe I should stay home, not even get a car. I don't know what my economic situation might be. So these are some of the kinds of things, and I'm going to call on my Gen Z to see if that's what you feel as well in that, because it's for the Gen Z coming up, it's a very uncertain time. So we have to, when we communicate, understand that they're coming from that front mindset, and we do have to find ways that they can help and make things better. Causes are important. Supporting the right things is important. And making the world better, because right now it's kind of a scary place in many ways. So now that I've said all of that about Gen Z, I want to hear what did you think about that? Do you agree? It's Emma, right? Emma. She's still here?
Yes, Emma, can you unmute? She's got a little bit unstable internet, but
Yeah, I see the blank screen there. Hi, Emma. Did you hear what I said there? I was curious if what I said if you could relate to that at all. Looks like you're having some internet challenge. Go ahead and just put, if you had any additional thoughts on that, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll highlight that afterward. I would appreciate your input because you're the newest generation coming up and we need to learn a lot from you as well. Okay, so I want to very quickly go through some of the things that we learned from 2020 and COVID in general, as far as spending and what happens. And this is a study that was done by the Generational Kinetics in the summer of 2020. And I'm just going to highlight these real quickly because as we are leaders and as we are marketing, as we're looking to reach out to people, understanding how the shift happened with both work and with spending money is interesting. And this was done in the summer of 2020, and you'll see that much of it has already played out. So 36% of Americans purchase groceries online for the first time. Many still do. 23% of Gen Z have borrowed money from family and friends the last 30 days. It's common for that to happen because we're dealing with debt. 36% of millennials subscribe to new streaming entertainment service, and those are continuing. That actually exploded. 40% of Gen X had donated to an individual charity to help those in need. Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z all pushed forward to help groups and organizations. 73% of Americans plan to spend their first money on dining afterward. We're seeing that play out. 57% of Americans plan to spend money on buying clothes. 71 agreed that they'll support local business more in the future, and we're seeing that play out. 68% of boomers say that our country will need at least 2 years to fully recover. That's definitely played out. 28% of boomers say they'd be worse off when the pandemic is over. 47% of Americans put more emphasis on saving money after the pandemic. And this is very true of the Gen Z generation and wanting to save money. So what I want to say with that is that we need to be aware of how the pandemic has affected not just our family and our group, but also our spending as we move forward as leaders and as business owners. Now, what I'm going to do next, and we're going to do this activity or go through this information, and then we'll take a break and come back and work with the concept that I'm going to discuss now. And that is a way to market. So let's say we want to communicate with the different generations. We want to get them interested in Toastmasters. We want to get them interested in our product. We want to get them involved. How do we do that? How do we market to the different groups? I did a fun little activity with two of my colleagues, Jim Connolly and Henry Klauke, and we decided to take something that was simple, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And even if you don't have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in your country, it's an easy one to describe, that you have 2 pieces of bread and you put some peanut butter and some jelly in between. And it's a common sandwich in the US, and it's something that's pretty simple to make. So we decided that what we would do is come up with a headliner and a tagline with each generation for selling the world's best peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So here's taking into account the framework of each generation. How would we market to them? Okay, I want to talk first to the veterans generation. So remember the war, the tough time, pulling together as a family. So here's the headliner, the homegrown peanut butter and jelly. How to bring your family together with a sandwich that tastes and feels like home. See how we're trying to tie into what would attract them. The boomers, see if this, we've got a lot of boomers in the room. Does this relate to you at all? I don't know if you remember, but I remember there was a big push for things to be heart healthy, and we needed to eat in a healthy way. So, and we were busy, we were working, we were trying to get things done. So how about the no nonsense peanut butter and jelly guide? A guide to making it, how to make a heart healthy version of this iconic sandwich that tastes just like you remember. See how that's tying in the homegrown, the healthy, and the fact that we're busy and want to have a guide. Gen X, remember Gen X now is more independent and on the go, the time saver peanut butter and jelly. How to efficiently create a tasty, fulfilling, cost-effective sandwich which you can take anywhere. And millennial, how about the one-click peanut butter and jelly? The #1 quick and easy recipe for an affordable portable meal that will satisfy your wallet, your watch, and your stomach. So we're advertising to the money crunch, the being fat, quick and easy on the go, because the millennials are doing 15 things at once, you know, taxi drivers for their kids and trying to go here and there. So it goes there. And then for the Gen Z, how about the peanut butter and jelly goes viral? The secret to an Instagram ready sandwich that is worth posting and might just change the world. Now, do you see what we've done here is we've taken the components of the way that a different generation, that cohort that grew up together, looks at things and said, okay, let's market to them. And when you market, you also have to think about how do you market? Where do you send it? Do you send it like if you're talking Gen Z, you've got to use your social media platforms. That's where they live, is on the social media platform. So use multiple ones. Millennials are going to be a blend. X's are going to be a blend between the virtual and email. And how are you going to do that? When you talk boomers, you're probably going to want to throw a few flyers in there. You're probably going to want to have some phone calling in there. And if you're talking to the veterans generation, you're going to want to talk to them, you know, say and tell them and do it in person if you can, or over the phone. So how you communicate is really important. Understanding their framework is really important, and why they look at the workforce differently, like why they look at leadership differently. That's really important. The interview process is totally different when you're talking to someone from the Gen Z and the millennial as it was when it was X and boomers. The interview process is very different now because they're looking at the world and the workforce from a different perspective. So we need to consider that. Okay, what we're going to do now is take a break.
Karen, you have 15 minutes left, so you can decide whether you want us to break or not.
Okay. Do you want to break for 5 or do you want to plow through? What's the group feel?
I think
Probably do a breakout room.
I think it would be good to press on to the breakout room.
Yes.
Okay, and let's go ahead and make it 7 minutes in the breakout room instead of 10. Make it 7. Send them to different breakouts, and when you go, there's an additional handout that has this information that's right here, just to keep it in mind. But what I want you to do in your breakout room is I want you to pick one generation, whatever generation you want in your group. I want you to come up with a headliner and a tagline to market them to Toastmasters. So you want to send a message to bring someone into Toastmasters. Which group are you going to do? Pick one. It doesn't matter which one you pick. And then come up with a headliner and a tagline. Why should they come to Toastmasters? What's it about? Just a quick headliner. So we'll take 7 minutes to do that in your groups. Pick your generation, and then come up with a headliner and a tagline. And then we'll come back in 7 minutes.
How are we supposed to pick the generation? Is it the one we're from, Karen, or? You're muted.
Are we all from the same generation? I'm just 22, so I think.
Karen, you're still muted.
So you can pick whichever generation you want. As a group, what do you want to pick? And let's come up with a headliner for them. What do you think as a group? What would you like? Who do you want to bring into Toastmasters? Do you want Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Y? Who do you want in the club?
We need some young people.
Okay, so let's market to the young people. We can market to Gen Z or Gen X. How about some Gen Z? Should we do that?
Sounds good.
Okay, so we want to bring some Gen Zs into Toastmasters. What's going to be our header to get them in? What should we say?
So the tagline for Gen Z, is it right?
Gen Zs, they're the youngest group.
Yeah, so what we are discussing is a tagline for Gen Z, right? As a group?
Yeah, we want to come up with like a header to come to Toastmasters, and what's the tagline? Just something, what's going to bring them in? We need some young people
come to
in this club.
Toastmasters. Oh, okay.
I'm still trying to take in the differences between these, but communication made easy. That sounds pretty weak to me.
Communication made easy. How about something with it going viral to tie in communication, something about communication going viral, because that's what they want. You know, Gen Z wants to get their message viral. Something about them being heard viral. What do you think?
No, I don't know. I think something else. Let's see.
Okay.
I like that. Make your message go viral. That's one possibility.
So one thing we can do is, I mean, some of the top achievers, some CEOs, senators, whatever it is, many of them started with Toastmasters very young. So something catchy with achievement and Toastmasters. I mean, I'm sure most of the people would like to aspire to grow in their career. So
I think communication is a good idea because most people are dealing with their phones all the time to talking to, and texts seem to be the main source of communication nowadays. It's actually just about everyone. No one wants to speak on the phone very much. So I think that is something about communication that I think it's important. And not only think, but also we just had an expo actually in District 1 last week about membership. And a lot of people came in and wanted to learn things because they needed for their job. They need job interviews, so then people can actually sit down and speak about something as opposed to texting to people. And I think that somehow that needs to kind of come together.
Well, and the Gen Z is really trying hard to get jobs. You know, like they're struggling to get jobs. They're struggling in the interview. They're struggling with those things. So we could tie into the communication or the interview. You want to get that interview first time?
I think it's important because people need to have something that they can actually do with Toastmasters. So what is it that they're going to learn, and what is their future will be? So
this is kind of general, but right words, greater influence.
Yeah.
like trying to make what you're saying smaller and snappier.
Yeah, yeah. And if you think they're going to look, they look on all the forms of social media. So they're doing videos, they're doing Snapchats, they're doing all of those kinds of things. So if there's a way to pop in, like I listened to a podcast the other day from a Gen Z. She talked a million miles an hour about how they're trying to get jobs, no one will give them jobs, and they can't get jobs because they're trying and no one's listening, and it just went on. And if you could veer that and say, you want that job now, or some, I'm just thinking out loud too. I mean, it's let's see, what can we do? What can we say to them?
No, just one suggestion. So, are we going to look at getting them into Toastmasters? I agree, people want jobs and things like that. Or do you want a tagline for their career? I mean,
Yeah,
it can
I think you
it can
could.
be
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
Yeah, it's aspirational because it's just not going to be getting the job. It's going to help them build. So
Right.
get
Because
on
it's
to
both
Toastmasters.
communication and leadership, like you were saying,
Correct.
Lindy.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Correct.
those are the two areas. And what do we want to say to grab them? We have to have something to grab them first, or they won't.
Something about career as opposed to jobs.
Right.
I think it's a better word about not just finding the career, but to
shine or to do well.
because Toastmaster does a lot of things, not just speaking, but it has a networking. People find connecting with each other, businesses. I had business from Toastmaster members myself, yes. And so there's a lot of aspect of this organization besides speaking. It's the career enhancement, is networking, and that's the leadership. But leadership doesn't really mean anything to a lot of people, because what does that mean? But I think it's the career, the networking, the friendship is a pretty major thing in Toastmasters. And certainly people who've been in this a long time, we have long-term friends. So there's a lot of aspects of this.
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of aspects. So when you're targeting a marketing, where basically you want to pick what's the key thing that's going to grab them first, and then want them to get into all of the other things.
Yeah, Mohan wants to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
A platform for all your aspirations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, that's very good.
I like it.
That's really nice. Mohan, you're hired.
Oh, there we go. We did it. You did it. That's perfect. Okay.
Yeah. So
so I think
career success from one meeting a week.
Hey, there you go. And
that's what we do in Toastmasters.
And
it's
it's
exactly
actually kind of
here.
fun to brainstorm these sorts of things in small groups and come up with like how you want to market that. I love that. Looks like we're going to be going back into the main room now. All right. Thank you all for participating in that. Hopefully you found that insightful. Our particular group, we're kind of going back and forth in different ideas. And then all of a sudden at the very end, Mohan came up with a great statement. Now I'll let you share that, Mohan, and then we'll hear from some of the other groups.
Oh, sorry. You're asking me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were how to get Gen Z into Toastmasters, right? The tagline we came up was a platform for all your aspirations.
A platform for all your aspirations. That's what we came up with. Can you relate to that, Emma? As a Gen Z, does that attract you?
it sounds interesting, but that's very broad that people would just probably swipe over. It'd be, you need to do very detailed to something or like a picture to like really draw them in. Like probably
Okay,
just do
so
wine glasses and cheering in, say, let's talk about difficult topics or something.
I love it.
But Emma, under the aspiration comes some other words. So that is not the whole thing. It's because aspiration involves a whole lot of different things. So when under the aspiration will be some breakdown of different aspect of the Toastmaster. So yeah.
So perfect. We have the opener, but then Emma, you're saying, I want to see a picture or something to keep me there, or I'm just going to scan over it. So you need a picture, maybe a video, maybe something that shares the detail that Judith is talking about. Otherwise, as a Gen Z, you're going to move on to something else because you're looking for the interaction on the video. Great.
If it
I love
isn't
it.
grabbed within 5-10 seconds, bye.
There you go. And that's important to know. So if you're working with a Gen Z, you want to make sure you grab their attention, you got some action, or they're going to be gone.
5 seconds.
I love
that's
it. I love it. Perfect. Okay, other groups, what did you find? What'd you come up with?
So our group had a headline also for Gen Z, Discourse with Diversity. It's time for you to express yourself.
Oh, I see a thumbs up from Emma. So what did that say to you, Emma?
Oh, it made me interesting. I want to know what's more about it.
Okay. And what triggered you? What was it that you got interested in?
There was plenty of things to explain, and I was like, oh, what is it?
Okay, good. Good. I love it. All right. Other folks.
There's at least one group who hasn't stepped up. Who is it?
Emma, no. So Vivian, Mario, Emma, and I started with a discussion and then thought, let's target millennial or Gen Z. And that's when we got into the Emma helping us with the, glasses of wine, let's talk, something short, catchy. And that was the first thing she said, glasses of wine, let's talk.
I love it. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for, oh, there we go.
Good job, Mario.
I love it. And that's the beauty of technology. We can pull it up right away and we can grab the attention. So I just love this, and I'm going to go ahead and pull all of this together and close out this session for today. And I just can't thank you enough for all of your participation. And let me just pull this up here and share my screen one last time. All right. All right, so in summary, let's talk about the 5 generations have different perspectives about work, about life, about future. Understanding their perspective is important if we're going to be successful in communicating with them. Each generational view has shaped by key events between the ages of 8 and 18. Generation Y and Z are our future. As leaders, we must shift strategies for workplace and partnership for success. And in our strategies, we need to have awareness, engagement, and education. That's really important as leaders. The 2020 pandemic impacted the world around in both in consumer and in work practice. And when you're designing your marketing, you want to keep in mind the target audience. And I found it fascinating that we all targeted the younger audience. We had a group of boomers, but we know that there's opportunity for Gen Y and Z in our group, but how do we reach you? And so I appreciate the feedback and that all of us wanted to help bring in more young folks, because there's a lot to be offered through Toastmasters and through better communication. So we want to design keeping the target audience, the generation, the geography, and their preferences for communication. Just like Emma was saying, she wants to see something active. She wants to see a picture. She wants to see a video. She wants to see something jump at her. Whereas the boomer generation isn't doing that as much. So if we're trying to attract a different group, we have to do our marketing and our communication and our listening differently. And partnering is another thing that you can do very effectively, like taking Emma and Judy and a couple of our Gen Xers and putting them together with some boomers and brainstorming what's going to make it better. And I'm absolutely thrilled, Emma, that you joined this group of boomers X and Y, and that we now have, we have 4 of the 5 generations here. So I am thrilled that I had the opportunity today, and I will close out my sharing at this point. And I know we're probably right, we're at time. So I'm going to turn it back to the Toastmaster for the evening. Lindy, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's been an absolute delight to have you present to us today. Before I hand it over to our club president, I'm just going to choose a couple of you and just ask what you're taking away from today. What's one big thing that you're taking away today? Sandra.
Thank you, Lindy, and thank you, Karen. Well, Karen, this is most wonderful information. I know some of us have heard you speak previously, but not in the form of a workshop and not so specifically to developing towards marketing, which I thought was wonderful, especially in our group. We had Thomas and Yvonne, and we chose, I believe it was Gen Z. Yes. You know, and we talked about how we as clubs want to target younger generations to Toastmasters, and I found it was extremely productive. And what this brought to my mind for this workshop is more to the forefront. I'll be more aware and more cognizant going forward, and it's certainly extremely applicable instantly. Thank you.
Marvelous. And while those of us who are older are busy learning about the youth, let me ask Emma, as a youth, what did you taking away from this Old Fogies conference?
That we barely scratched the surface of the topic. And be observation of everything, if it's in your culture or not. Just ask questions. Don't just keep to yourself.
Marvelous recommendations. And on those insights, I will pass things back to our club president, Hazel Booth.
Wow. There was a whole lot to explore on our own time about the things, the water we've been swimming in, the water our kids have been swimming in, and the water our coworkers have lived. It's a lot. And I think, you know, as we use this, we can't just constrict it to marketing. We also have to think about it when we're mentoring other Toastmasters, or when we're maintaining. Are people feeling connected? Are they feeling seen and heard? What matters to them? What's the style that they need to be connected with? So I feel like this is definitely a lot to explore, and it's on each of us to do that. Even though we want it to be 2 ways, it's going to start with us. So I'd just like to look at our audience now, our guests. Thank you once again for coming. And let's hear from Yvonne. Would you like to share how this was for you tonight?
It's really great. The first time I joined the meeting, that it's different time zone with me. And I, especially today, the workshop, I learned that we can learn the different opinions from different generations. This is the first time I think about we can promote Toastmaster to different group of people. And I want to apply the skills I learned today to my future Toastmaster journey. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So glad you could join us. Ray Sook, how was this experience for you? You jumped right in with both feet.
How could I say? As another guest mentioned, I learned that to promote Toastmaster to Generation Z, I mean young people, we have we should use a little different strategy, which we had used. So it's my takeaway message today from today. Thank you.
Thank you. Vivian, our radio personality, what did you take away from today?
Today, I figured out that there are old souls that are the age of Emma. I would like for more of us to listen to them.
Love that. Thank you. Wise words. Dave, would you like to weigh in?
As was said earlier, I've had the privilege of hearing Karen's presentation a few other occasions, and it's always something new, always something different. And seeing it in this format, being able to hear, understand, appreciate the viewpoints of some of these groups that she talks about was definitely a bonus. And it helps to cement the concepts that she's talking about, that there are different opinions, there are different viewpoints, and it's based on not because of that's just the way they are, but that's what they know.
Right.
And if we want to be able to cooperate and communicate with others, there needs to be a little give and take.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for coming tonight. Mr. Mario, our tech whiz, fast fingers. What do you got to say about your experience tonight?
Very engaging, informational, sublime, and most importantly, gave me an idea to have a speech on the same project I did, Karen did, and do more research, because I was going to do a classic speech, but engaging, interact, involving the entire audience, I think is a game changer, because icebreakers in every speech in pathways moving forward in a couple of years. I wish they had the mandatory requirement, interact with your audience and get them involved, something. Because this way people remember the speech better, rather than just having your classical icebreaker. I come from there and there, I do this and this. So I think this is a great takeaway, and I wish even the people listening or watching this recording afterwards to be appreciative that you're not talking to a wall, you're talking to people, and get them involved. The more they, you learn by doing, right? Now, if you learn from a speech by doing and listening and hearing, you're involving all your senses, and it's much more tangible. Even 10 years later, I remember that icebreaker because it stood out. So don't be afraid of taking risks and going outside of the boundaries of what Prepared to Speak Professionally is, or any other project. Because with that, you can push the boundaries to where even TI can modify it to the majority's needs, because one cannot change the world, but many can. Remember that. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So next to Karen, Emma, you were sort of our star today. Would you like to put in the final word here?
I guess keep your eyes open and ask questions.
So just like everyone else, you guys all want to be seen and heard. Exactly. Well, thank you so much. So at our last meeting, we actually took 15 minutes at the end of the meeting, and people just kind of hung out and chatted and talked. And if you would like to continue this conversation, we're going to keep the floor open for just a little bit, and we would love to have you chime in. Thank you again for joining us. This was an awesome meeting. And I didn't actually ask all of our members, and I'm sure they have something to say. So step up.
I'll just
I do want to add one thing real quickly before people start heading out, is in the chat, we did put the copy of the PowerPoint from today, which also has references and resources for you. And I also have a communications tool that my son, who is a millennial, and I put together. And it's a two-sided thing. One side talks about generational identifiers and characteristics. So it has, on one part of it, it shows the different generations, and then it's what are the seminal events that took place, communication preferences, work environment, leader, styles, and turnoffs for each generation. Then on the other side of it is divided to where you have the different generations on the side, the different generations on the top, and you use it like a cross. If I'm a boomer wanting to talk to a Gen X, I follow the grid and it tells me what I need to keep in mind. So it's designed to sort of help you connect with the different generations. So that's available to you as well. And if any of you take it and look at it and use it and have feedback, I would love it. We are constantly evolving it to make it match better to what people are telling us is working or not working for their generations. Thank you.
Awesome. So I think Lindy had one more thing to say as well. That table sounds really useful. I'm gonna make sure I get that.
Karen, would you double up by sending those documents to our club directly? And I would be glad to send it to those people who have registered as well.
Well, let's also talk about our next meeting. Would you
I
like?
just want to say one thing, is that I really appreciate this because I am about to, the headlines were very good for me because I am about to put a marketing thing together for a class. I mean, a 6 weeks program that I am about to start in next month in a a school that foreign students come to learn English, and I've been wanting to do a public speaking seminar or something there forever. And so finally they agreed. And so now I have to put a promotional material together. And I just thought this was so perfect because now I have all those things for platform and diversity and lots of things, so I can put my little advertising program together. So thank you.
If I may say so, these headlines are copyrighted by the 16 copywriters. No, go
will
ahead.
be copyrighted once I am finished with the whole thing. That's a different story.
There was a lot that went into the chat at the end. I just want to say that our next meeting for this club is March 7th, and we will have our classic 3-speaker meeting. Each speaker gets 4 evaluations. Some of you know that I placed 3rd in the 2020 World Championship of Public Speaking, and I credit this club in helping me to achieve that. So please do come back and learn how this club can help you make your speaking style that much better.
I think Jason signed up, I think, for that. Yeah, I heard. Yeah, it's good.
And then the next special event is March 21st, and we are having a special event about AI, Unleash Your Creativity with AI. So we look forward to having you back for that as well.
Vivian,
Yes,
wanna collaborate?
sure. I love you.
Great.
So
You have
Vivian,
my email.
that you might want a picture. I don't know if you got a picture like you often do. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mario.
No one just sharing, broaden my social.
We also have to share what we accomplished in the last 100 years.
I'll
Let's
let everybody
not
smile
forget
at the
that.
camera while we're thinking about 100 years. Smile. Okay.
100 years.
Okay.
We have accomplished a lot in 100 years in this organization.
Well, more than 100, but before it became.
No, it's not more 100. It will be exactly 100 in August.
I'm talking Smedley started clubs before 24, but that's a story for another time.
Yeah, no, we stay with Smedley.
No, Smedley before Toastmasters was
1924.
That was created, but Smedley took Smedley 7 years to create Toastmasters. I think 7 or 8. I have to ask people.
All right, I know the history, so let's not discuss this. And thank you. It was nice to see you before we move on to this.
I want to Thank you, Karen McNamara, for bringing your professional expertise to our club. A gift. And as
Karen, make sure you have space between words, because you were missing one space in brackets on slide 3.